My beloved friends, a fool is loud. A master is silent. The storm doesn't announce itself, it just arrives. Chosen ones, they mocked you, laughed at you, saw you as nothing more than a wandering pawn on their board. They schemed in shadows, whispered in corners, played their little games with smug grins, believing they had you exactly where they wanted. But now, their hands are shaking, their confidence is cracking, that arrogance they once wore like armor, it's rotting into panic, because they've realized too late, they were never the hunter. They were the bait. If this message speaks to your spirit, I invite you to like and subscribe, because every time you engage, YouTube recognizes that more chosen ones need to hear this. And believe me, they do. Let's flood the system. Let's wake them up. Let's remind them who we really are. And to every one of you who has shown love through a super thanks, thank you. From the depths of my heart, thank you. Your support makes it possible to keep spreading this light. But whether you give or not, know this: your presence, your energy, and your spirit here are more than enough. I'm grateful either way. You see, the power of being chosen isn't loud. It doesn't chase clout. It doesn't beg to be seen. It sits, it watches. It allows the enemy to get comfortable in their own illusion until that illusion shatters. Because that's what real power does. It doesn't force, it reveals. And when the truth arrives, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. But chosen one, you made one mistake. One misstep. They counted on it. You believed you were alone. You questioned your own fire. And that was the illusion they needed you to believe. That you were outnumbered. That you were cornered. That you were weak. But the universe does not abandon its chosen. The moment they moved against you, they weren't just fighting flesh and blood. They were fighting the force that backs you. And that force, it does not forget. It does not lose. And it most certainly does not miss. They thought they had you trapped, thought you were confused, isolated, lost. But you weren't trapped. You were studying. You weren't behind. You were observing. You weren't outplayed. You were letting them expose themselves. Because chosen ones don't chase shadows. We stand in light and let the enemy drown in their own darkness. And now, that's what haunts them. Not your retaliation, but your stillness. Because you weren't the pawn in their game. You were the storm they never prepared for. The moment you moved, it was already too late. The power of being chosen doesn't just shake the room, it shakes the soul. Not with noise, but with truth. Because to a manipulator, the most terrifying thing in the world is a mind they can no longer control. So let them run, let them spiral, let them scramble for damage control. You don't need revenge. Your existence is already their consequence. You were never the fool. You were the test. And they failed. So, chosen one, are you ready to shatter the illusion? Ready to rise into the power they hoped you'd never claim? Then drop 777 in the comments if you've felt the shift, if you've seen the tables turn, if you've watched them scramble as the weight of truth crushes every lie they built. Because now we begin. Let's break it down, step by step. And if you're truly chosen, you won't just hear this, you'll feel it in your bones. Let's get started. God's chosen ones, they thought you were a fool, but you're smarter than they ever imagined. Number 1, they counted you out, but you were keeping score. They counted you out, chosen one, but all along you were quietly keeping score. While they saw you as nothing more than background noise, you were silently cataloging every move, every misstep, every time they underestimated your worth. Have you ever wondered why people so quick to dismiss you are often the first to fall into the very traps they set for others? The deadliest opponent isn't the loudest in the room. It's the one who listens, waits, and lets pride lead the enemy into their own destruction. That was you, misjudged, ignored, labeled as naive. But in truth, You were the calm eye in the center of their storm. They thought they had you mapped out. They mistook your gentleness for gullibility, your stillness for stupidity. They believed they could manipulate your path, alter your pace, and shape your purpose to serve their own comfort. Like puppeteers tugging at imaginary strings, they assumed you'd dance at their will. But here's the secret they never saw coming. You were never theirs to control. In fact, they were dancing for you without even knowing it. You weren't reacting, you were studying. You weren't shrinking, you were sharpening. And just like Joseph in Genesis 50:20, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Chosen one, while they broadcasted their intentions, your silence spoke volumes. You took no shortcuts, you didn't beg for recognition, and yet you knew every lie they told, every smile that hid a knife. You were watching, you were always aware. Remember how David was overlooked by his own family in 1 Samuel 16. His father didn't even consider him worthy enough to stand before the prophet, but God saw what no one else could. Just like David, you were hidden for a reason, not forgotten, but preserved. The world looked at your outer shell and assumed they had you figured out, but they never looked deeper. They didn't understand that what God hides, He protects. What He conceals, He prepares. Isn't it fascinating how those who once mocked you for your silence are now haunted by the echo of their own words? Every secret they whispered behind closed doors, every mocking glance they shared when you walked away, every time they thought you were blind to their schemes, it all belongs to you now. You hold the script they once used against you. And as Psalm 37:12-13 reminds us, the wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes at him with his teeth, but the Lord laughs at him, for He sees his day is coming. You weren't weak, you were being refined. You weren't passive, you were being positioned. And now they feel the shift. The atmosphere has changed, and so has your silence. The tables they once sat at comfortably are now shaking. The very ground they thought was stable beneath their feet has started to crumble. And the most haunting thought creeping into their minds is this: they weren't a fool. I was. Take the story of Vera Wang, who was told she wasn't good enough to make the US Olympic figure skating team. She pivoted quietly and became one of the most iconic fashion designers of our time. She didn't rage, she redirected. And you, chosen one, have done the same. You didn't scream to prove your worth. You let your results do the talking. Or look at Malcolm X, once silenced, imprisoned, and written off. Yet, in that quiet place, he learned, transformed, and emerged with such clarity and influence that even those who feared him had no choice but to respect him. Isn't that exactly what God does with His chosen? He pulls them away from the noise to mold them into warriors no one sees coming. And when people thought chess prodigy Judith Polgar was wasting her time, being a girl in a male-dominated game, she didn't argue. She waited. Then she defeated world champions, proving that real power doesn't have to announce itself. So now, chosen one, let them sit in their false sense of superiority. Let them laugh a little louder, thinking you're still behind. Let them underestimate you one more time, because as Proverbs 26:27 says, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. They weren't outsmarting you. They were digging their own grave with every dismissive move. You were never foolish for refusing to play their game. You were wise for staying above it. Now you carry the upper hand, not in pride, but in purpose, not in revenge, but in revelation. You've waited long enough. The final act isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. Let them see what God has always seen in you, because in the end, the one they tried to silence is the one whose voice will echo the loudest and the last laugh. It was never theirs to keep. It was always yours to give. Number 2. Now they stumble over their own lies. They once moved with so much certainty, didn't they? The ones who mocked your silence, who thought your humility was weakness, who strutted around like kings in a kingdom they didn't build. They spoke loudly, as if volume alone was proof of truth. But you, chosen one, you stayed quiet, not because you lacked power, but because you were mastering it. So let me ask you, have you ever wondered why they needed so much noise just to feel relevant? Now their words tremble, their confidence falters, their laughter rings empty. You see it, how they glance your way, hesitant now, as if your presence suddenly has weight. That weight was always there. It's just that they were too blinded by arrogance to see it. But God saw it. As Proverbs 10:14 declares, wise men store up knowledge, but the mouth of the fool invites ruin. They used their mouths, you used your mind. They thought you were the fool. But here's the twist, they played themselves. In their rush to dominate, they built their towers on sand. And when the storm came, your storm, it exposed the cracks. Isn't it ironic how those who once tried to bury you now find themselves sinking beneath the weight of their own deception? Even Jesus was mocked and dismissed. In Mark 15:31, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. They thought his silence was defeat, but it was the beginning of a victory beyond their comprehension. Just like you, chosen one, what if your silence all along was the sign of something far greater than they could ever grasp? They relied on force, you relied on foresight. While they twisted truth, you stood with it. While they used lies to rise, you used truth to stand. Look at them now. Their lies trip them up. Their stories don't align. Their masks are cracking. Just like the Pharisees who tried to trap Jesus with their cleverness, but ended up exposing their own hypocrisy. Matthew 22:18 through 22. They too are ensnared by their own schemes. And yet, here you are, still standing, stronger, clearer, prepared. You've come to realize that your silence wasn't emptiness, it was sacred space. Have you started to see just how powerful you are when you stop questioning your own light and start trusting your divine design? Esther too moved in silence. She didn't need to shout her authority, she just needed the right moment. And when it came, kingdoms shifted, just like Toni Morrison, who was told by publishers early on that her stories about Black life were too narrow or too specific. She didn't argue. She simply kept writing, and eventually her work changed the literary world. Could it be that your story, like hers, was never meant to fit their standards because it was always meant to rewrite them? Or think of Chadwick Boseman. He faced mocking, assumptions and doubt while secretly battling a terminal illness. But he moved with purpose, carried himself with grace, and when the world finally realized the truth, it was too late for their apologies to matter. And like Aung San Suu Kyi, who was silenced, detained and dismissed for years, yet her quiet endurance shaped the destiny of a nation. So now, chosen one, don't waste time proving yourself. The truth is doing the work for you. Let them trip over the very lies they built. Let them wrestle with the image of the one they thought was beneath them, now standing tall, radiant, unshaken. Because as Isaiah 54:17 declares, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. You don't need revenge. You already have revelation, and revelation is always louder than noise. What if everything they tried to use to break you has now become the proof that you were the storm they couldn't see coming? Number 3. You were never just an extra in their story. You were the author. They thought they were the stars, chosen one, that the world turned for them, that the spotlight would always follow their voice. They never imagined you were the one writing the story they walked into. Why? Because you didn't perform. You didn't push. You simply moved, quietly, steadily, building something beyond their vision. But tell me this, have you ever noticed how the ones obsessed with the spotlight rarely realize who's controlling the stage? You were always there, in the room, in the conversation, behind the scenes. They saw your face, but they never truly looked at your presence, and so they labeled you extra, background, non-threat. But that was their fatal error. Because while they were flexing control, twisting narratives to suit their ego, you were studying their every move, not with vengeance but with vision. You weren't looking for approval. You were learning the map. And now it's checkmate. Much like how Moses moved through Pharaoh's palace, unnoticed, underestimated. But he wasn't just another Hebrew child. He was the one chosen to confront empires. And when the time came, the plagues fell, the waters parted, and Pharaoh, the one who thought himself a god, was brought low. That same God, Exodus 14:14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Isn't it interesting how those who try to make you invisible are often the most afraid of what you'll become when you're finally seen? You never shouted your worth. You never needed to, because you were the one holding the pen. They thought they were scripting your failure, but all the while you were scripting their exposure. Like the story of Hedy Lamarr, seen only as a beautiful actress, dismissed by the powerful as ornamental. But secretly, she was inventing a frequency-hopping system that would become the foundation of modern wireless communication. And Malcolm Gladwell once told, his voice was too strange for broadcast journalism. He didn't push to be accepted, he redirected and became a best-selling author. Or Amanda Gorman, who was once a young girl with a speech impediment, unseen by the world, but rose to deliver one of the most iconic inaugural poems in history. So what about you? Could it be that what others saw as your weakness was actually the very weapon God was preparing in secret? You too were preparing, not performing. While they rushed to be seen, you remained grounded in what mattered. And now, as their illusions unravel, your truth emerges. And what haunts them most isn't just that they lost, but that they lost to someone they didn't even realize was playing. They operated on applause. You operated on alignment. They pursued visibility. You pursued purpose. And now, in their confusion, they feel the shift. The one they mocked now controls the narrative, because as Luke 8:17 tells us, "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." And Romans 8:31 seals it, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" Let them wrestle with the past. Let them rethink every interaction they had with you. Let them finally realize you were never just an extra. You were the storm. You were the one sent by God to expose what could not stay hidden. You were the author they never read until it was too late. Now tell me, are you ready to start writing the next chapter, not just for you, but for the generations watching your rise? Number 4, true power doesn't beg to be seen. It commands without a sound. You've always known, haven't you, that true power doesn't scream for attention. It simply arrives and changes the atmosphere. Have you ever walked into a room and noticed how everything shifts even before you say a word? That's not arrogance. That's alignment. That's divine weight. And chosen one, that's you. They thought the loudest voice ruled the room. They believed the one with the biggest audience held the greatest authority. But power doesn't come from noise. It comes from depth. It comes from stillness. Proverbs 17:27 tells us, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." They used every breath to perform. You used silence to command. They confused dominance with drama, mistaking visibility for influence. But real influence doesn't require the spotlight. It creates its own gravitational pull. They were so caught up in being noticed, so frantic in their pursuit of validation, that they completely missed the one thing that should have made them tremble: your presence. Why do you think they never noticed the one who never needed to be seen? You were in the same room, yet untouched by their games. You heard their boasting, their whispering, their mocking smirks. But instead of reacting, you simply observed. You absorbed the energy. You mastered the game without playing it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And now they feel the shift. They sense something is different, and they don't even know why. Their confidence now cracks beneath your gaze. Their once sharp words stumble. Their laugh doesn't ring out like it used to. They fidget. They avoid eye contact. Because deep down, something inside them is whispering, "You're no longer in control." Isaiah 30:15 says, "In quietness and trust is your strength. And in your stillness, your power has become undeniable." Think of Grace Hopper, the brilliant mind behind some of the earliest programming languages. In a male-dominated field, she didn't shout her way to the top. She let her intelligence reshape the future. Or consider Fred Rogers, the quiet host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He didn't demand the room, but his presence healed generations. Could it be that your stillness, too, is the very reason they now feel unsteady? Then there's Aretha Franklin, who didn't have to demand respect. She simply embodied it, and the world gave it to her. You, like her, don't need to raise your voice. Your presence speaks what words cannot. They were playing checkers. You were redesigning the board. When did you first realize that they were trapped in a game you no longer had any interest in playing? That's what unsettles them. That's what breaks them now. Because power built on fear collapses the moment real strength walks in. And you, chosen one, were never trying to win their game. You were rewriting the rules. Now they're left fumbling, grasping for the dominance they never truly had. Because the truth has finally broken through. The person they dismissed, the one they thought they could control, was the only one holding true influence all along. Zechariah 4:6 declares, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord Almighty." You didn't conquer with force. You shifted everything with presence. They didn't understand the power of a quiet warrior. But now they do. And there's no turning back. So let them fidget. Let them overthink. Let them whisper nervously. You don't need revenge. You don't even need a response. Your stillness already said everything. Number 5. They dug their own graves. You just watched. A fool believes they're winning until the edge is already beneath their feet. Isn't it strange, chosen one, how confidently they move when they think they've outsmarted someone who was never even playing their game? They paraded around in illusions, crafted schemes with pride, whispered behind your back as if lies could rewrite the truth. But all along you were watching, silent, still, unshaken. Have you ever realized that the most powerful victories are the ones where you didn't have to lift a single finger? That's divine intelligence. That's spiritual clarity. Proverbs 26:27 says, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." And that's exactly what happened. They thought they were building an empire, but what they were really constructing was a trap for themselves. And you saw it. Every phony smile, every shift in tone, every fake compliment wrapped in manipulation. You noticed. You always noticed. And what did you do? Nothing. You didn't call them out. You didn't fight for truth. You didn't plead for fairness. Why? Because you knew something deeper. What's built on deception will always collapse under its own weight. Psalm 7:15-16 tells us, Whoever digs a hole and scoops it out falls into the pit they have made. The trouble they cause recoils on them. So you waited, and they walked, step by step, lie by lie, betrayal by betrayal, right into their own downfall. Think of Alan Turing, the genius who cracked the Nazi Enigma code during World War II. He was mocked, ridiculed, and later betrayed by the very country he helped save. But history reversed the mockery. His quiet work became one of the greatest contributions to modern computing. Could it be that, like Turing, you too were solving a much bigger puzzle while they wasted time playing petty games? Or consider Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till Mobley. In the face of her son's brutal murder, she didn't seek revenge. She showed the world the truth. Her decision to hold an open casket funeral exposed the cruelty and began a movement. She didn't act in rage. She acted in clarity. That's real power. Then there's Alanis Morissette, once mocked for being too emotional in her lyrics. But that emotional honesty transformed the music industry. She didn't scream louder, she just told the truth. And the world eventually tuned in. How many times did they mistake your silence for ignorance, never realizing it was protection? And now, they dangle, suspended by the very web they spun. The weight they once tried to place on you has now collapsed on them. Their own choices have become their chains, and what's worse, there's no one left to blame but themselves. Because, chosen one, you never had to manipulate. You never had to retaliate. You never had to expose them. All you had to do was wait. And that waiting, that was the loudest judgment of all. Romans 12:19 says, "Do not take revenge, but leave room for God's wrath." And God saw everything. They thought they were orchestrating your fall, but they were only rehearsing their own. Isn't it something how those who thought they were writing your ending were really drafting their own destruction? So don't lift a finger. Don't waste your energy. They are unraveling. And you're rising, not with noise, but with undeniable truth. Let the ruins of their deception stand as a monument to one truth. You were never the pawn. You were the prophecy. Number 6. And now the weight of their own lies is crushing them. They smiled while stabbing you in the back. They laughed while spinning stories. They strutted through their illusions with such confidence, chosen one, thinking they were ahead. But have you noticed how quiet they've become lately? The weight they once placed on your shoulders now presses heavily on their own. And it's not because you fought them. It's because you let truth speak louder than revenge. A fool never knows the game is lost until the final move is made. And now that move has arrived. Look at them, squirming in the very traps they set, fumbling through the tangled web of their own deception. Their voices shake. Their once cocky presence dims. Why? Because they finally see it. You saw everything. You always did. As Proverbs 5:22 reminds us, the evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. They believed they were hidden, that their masks were airtight, that you were too simple, too blind, too soft to notice. But you noticed. You saw the passive-aggressive smirks, the lies told when they thought you weren't listening, the small betrayals disguised as honest mistakes. You saw it all, and you chose silence. Why didn't you expose them? Why didn't you fight back? Because your silence wasn't surrender. It was sovereignty. It was wisdom. You let them believe their performance. You let them build their illusions on the shifting sands of pride. And now the tide is rising. Psalm 94:23 declares, "He will repay them for their sins and destroy them for their wickedness. The Lord our God will destroy them." And you didn't need to lift a hand, because God saw what they did in secret and started shifting everything in your favor. Like whistleblower Dr. Frances Kelsey, who quietly refused to approve a dangerous drug for pregnant women despite corporate pressure. She wasn't loud. She wasn't confrontational. but her silent courage saved thousands. Have you ever wondered if your quiet resistance has been protecting more than just yourself? Or take tennis legend Naomi Osaka. She walked away from interviews and tournaments not in weakness, but in power. Critics mocked her for being too soft, but her silence started a global conversation on mental health and personal boundaries. Real strength doesn't always look how the world expects. Then there's whistleblower Sharon Watkins, who uncovered the Enron scandal from within. She didn't scream, she didn't march, she just told the truth when it mattered most, and the corporate empire crumbled. So now, chosen one, look again. The hands that once clapped for their schemes are now folded in confusion. Their words don't land the same. Their smiles look forced. Their energy feels heavy. And the worst part? They know it's not you, it's them. You didn't destroy them. They did it to themselves. Romans 2:5 says, "Because of your stubbornness, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath." They stored consequences like treasures, and now they've arrived to collect. Have you ever seen someone slowly realize they've lost everything, not because they were beaten, but because they refused to be honest with themselves? That's what they face now. And you remain still, steady, chosen. Your patience was never passive, it was prophetic. Number 7, they weren't fighting you, they were fighting the inevitable. They thought they were coming after a person. They thought it was about winning a petty argument, outmaneuvering you in a moment of control, playing mental chess to corner you. But chosen one, what if the battle they started was never with you, but with something eternal you were carrying all along? A storm doesn't argue, it doesn't explain, it arrives. And you, chosen one, were the storm they never saw coming. You didn't threaten them, you didn't warn them, but your presence was a disruption, a signal that their time was up, because they weren't just challenging you, they were challenging purpose, and purpose never loses. Isaiah 41:10 assures us, "Do not fear, for I am with you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Every time they moved against you, heaven took notice. What they thought was manipulation was actually a countdown. Each scheme they crafted against you became a tool used for your ascension. They were writing the script, but they didn't know the plot twist favored you. How many times did they try to crush you, not realizing pressure only makes the chosen stronger? Like the diamond forged in darkness, your silence under pressure became your brilliance in light. They didn't believe in divine timing. They scoffed at destiny. They mocked the idea that the unseen world moves on behalf of those called by God. And yet, Romans 8:28 remained true. In all things, God works for the good of those who love him, even betrayal, even rejection, even their attacks. Take Bethany Hamilton, a young surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack. Everyone counted her out, but not only did she return to the sport, she dominated. Her faith and resilience became a symbol of strength. What tried to stop her became the story that elevated her. Have you started to realize that the very things meant to break you are now the foundation of your rising? Or think of Brandon Stanton, the creator of Humans of New York. He wasn't a journalist, wasn't famous, and wasn't trying to go viral. He just walked the streets and listened. Now, his platform has raised millions, inspired change, and revealed the sacred in the everyday. Quiet purpose, unstoppable movement. Or Malcolm X, who once lived in prison, silenced and discarded. But when he rose, he carried a storm of clarity, purpose, and awakening that shook the world. He wasn't fighting people, he was fulfilling prophecy. That's what they missed. They thought they were mocking a person, but they were resisting a plan. And now they feel it, the shift, the unraveling, the fear that they never had control, never had the upper hand. Because the more they tried to limit you, the more they aligned you with destiny. Proverbs 21:30 says, "There is no wisdom, no insight, no plan that can succeed against the Lord. And you, chosen one, were never alone, never without backup, never out of alignment. Have they finally realized that every step they took against you was pushing you toward exactly where you were meant to be? Now their schemes burn, their stories collapse. The fire they played with has turned on them, and you walk away untouched, not because you ran, but because you rose, because you weren't just fighting back, you were fulfilling fate. Number 8, they thought they were running the race, but the finish line was never theirs to cross. They moved like winners, didn't they? Fast, loud, flashy, strutting as if they were ahead, as if the world itself bowed to their timing. But chosen one, have you ever realized that some people run so loudly because they're trying to outrun the truth? They thought they were leading, but they were simply speeding toward their own collapse. They assumed you were behind, that you were desperate to catch up, that you were chasing the spotlight they built on illusions. But you weren't even in the same race. You weren't following them. You were being elevated above them. Because destiny doesn't chase, it positions. And those marked by God, they don't compete with fools. They let the fools race to their own ruin. As Proverbs 16:18 warns, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. They moved with arrogance, believing they could rewrite reality, steer the outcome, and manipulate your path. But they forgot one thing: you are chosen. The steps of a chosen one are ordered by God. Just like Harriet Tubman, who quietly led hundreds to freedom, not by seeking fame, but by obeying divine direction. Or Vincent van Gogh, whose work was mocked and ignored in his lifetime, yet now commands reverence across generations. Could it be that, like them, your worth wasn't meant to be seen early? It was meant to be undeniable later. They thought every move they made was brilliant, but what if those moves were just markers leading them to the end of their own illusion? Jeremiah 10:23 says, "Lord, I know that people's lives are not their own. It is not for them to direct their steps." They believed they were shaping fate, but every decision they made was part of a plan that would unravel them, not you. And now the panic sets in. They try to rewrite the past, pretend they weren't against you, call it misunderstandings or miscommunications. But you know better. You see the truth now, not the mask, but the desperation beneath it. Their confidence was never real. Their dominance was never sustainable. Their control was a story they sold to themselves. Like Ada Lovelace, whose contributions to computing were ignored for decades, history had to catch up to her genius, just like the world is now catching up to yours. And those who mocked you, they were never ahead. They were just loud. Have you started to notice how silence ages well, but ego crumbles fast? That's why you never needed to fight them, because they were never on your path. They were distractions to be ignored, and now they see it. You were never chasing them. You were being called higher. Romans 9:16 reminds us, "It does not therefore depend on human desire or effort, but on God's mercy." They tried to win by effort, but you were carried by grace. So let them look back. Let them wonder where it all went wrong. Because the truth is, they lost the moment they mistook your patience for defeat. Number 9, game over. They just didn't know it yet. They thought they had it all figured out. Their plans, their moves, their cleverness. They believed they were playing the game, running the board. But chosen one, have you ever noticed how the ones who claim to be in control are often the first to fall when truth reveals itself? They moved like masterminds, convinced they had already won before the real test even began. They tried to break you, shape you, silence you. They mistook your calm for weakness, your delay for defeat. But they never realized you weren't playing their game. You were letting them bury themselves in it. Psalm 9:15 says, The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden, and now that net has snapped shut. The board is flipped. The silence they used to mock now echoes with their own regrets. They weren't the players, they were the pawns. Every so-called move they made only revealed their desperation. Their strategies were smoke and mirrors, and now the smoke has cleared. Take Ignaz Semmelweis, the doctor who discovered hand-washing could save lives, mocked, ridiculed, institutionalized, but he didn't lash out, and now his name is etched in history while his critics are forgotten. Isn't it strange how truth doesn't always speak first, but it always speaks last? Or Greta Thunberg, mocked by world leaders, underestimated by skeptics, yet her voice, quiet but unrelenting, has mobilized millions. She didn't strike back, she stood still. That's what power looks like. Then there's Bessie Coleman, the first black female pilot, denied entry to every aviation school in America. So she went to France. She didn't argue, she soared. And now her legacy flies above the very limits others tried to place on her. Romans 12:19 reminds us, "Do not take revenge, leave room for God's wrath." And you, chosen one, didn't strike first because you knew truth was already writing its response. You just had to let them reveal themselves. And now it's over. Game, set, match. They sit in silence, wrestling with their own arrogance. And you never had to scream. You never had to prove a thing. Because the final move was never yours to make. It was theirs to stumble into. Isn't it the sweetest victory when you never had to lift a finger, and still everything turned in your favor? That's not revenge. That's divine order. Number 10. The illusion of control was their greatest weakness. They moved like rulers, didn't they? Speaking with authority, barking commands, walking like they owned the moment. But you, chosen one, saw through it. Have you ever looked someone in the eyes and realized they were bluffing the entire time? That's what they were. Just noise wrapped in nerves. They confused control with volume. They thought being loud meant being powerful. But real control, it doesn't beg, it doesn't shout, it observes, it prepares, it lets the foolishness unfold. Proverbs 18:2 says, "Fools find no pleasure in understanding but delight in airing their own opinions." And they aired plenty, assuming you were beneath them, assuming they had you figured out. But while they were busy moving pieces around, you were already reading the end game. Like Katherine Johnson, whose calculations helped NASA launch astronauts into orbit, while men talked over her in every meeting. She didn't yell, she calculated. And the mission succeeded because of her silence. Or Rachel Carson, whose book Silent Spring started the modern environmental movement. Ignored by politicians, mocked by industry, but her work outlasted every critic. And don't forget LeBron James, who was once mocked for his decision to leave Cleveland, only to return, dominate, and deliver a championship. His moves were strategic, purposeful, calculated. James 3:13 asks, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom." You didn't fight to be right. You let your results speak. They thought they had control, but control isn't about domination, it's about direction. And you saw the whole field. You let them overplay their hands. You let them believe the illusion, because the greatest downfall begins when someone gets too comfortable in a lie. Have you started to see how your restraint was never weakness, but prophetic timing? Now they sit with the consequences, not because you attacked, but because they exposed themselves. And you never needed to respond, because God fights for the chosen in ways the unprepared cannot comprehend. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." You were still, And now the proof surrounds you, because when someone tries to dominate the board, you simply rise above it. That's what it means to be chosen. Number 11. They built their confidence on lies, and now it's crumbling. They walked like they owned the truth, didn't they? Spoke as if their voices were carved in stone. They built a persona so carefully, so deliberately, crafted to appear strong, untouchable, admired. But you, chosen one, have you ever looked someone in the eyes and seen that everything they built was made of mirrors and fear? They constructed their confidence on deception, every word rehearsed, every step calculated to impress. But a foundation made of lies always cracks beneath real pressure. As Matthew 7:26-27 reminds us, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand, and it fell with a great crash. You watched quietly, you didn't interfere. You let them perform while you stood still, because you knew their strength wasn't real, their pride wasn't grounded, their persona was a costume stitched together by insecurity. Like Elizabeth Holmes, who built an empire on the illusion of innovation. Her downfall wasn't sudden, it was inevitable. Or like Fire Festival's Billy McFarland, who sold luxury built on empty promises. Have you begun to understand that your silence wasn't submission? It was wisdom waiting for gravity to do its work? They fooled others. They even fooled themselves. But they never fooled you. And now, their words are hesitant. Their tone has changed. Their smiles don't hold power anymore, because you're no longer feeding their illusion, and without your energy, the mask is slipping. Isaiah 28:17 declares, I will make justice the measuring line and righteousness the plumb line. Hail will sweep away your refuge, the lie. The storm has arrived, not because you brought it, but because they summoned it with every deception. Think of Bernie Madoff, whose towering financial empire collapsed under the weight of lies. The longer he ran, the harder he fell. Confidence that needs fear to survive is not strength, it's borrowed time. Have you ever noticed that when you stop responding, the loudest ones begin to shrink? That's because their power was never real. It was borrowed from your attention. Now they hesitate. Now they squirm. The same ones who once smirked now second-guess their every word. Not because you've changed, but because you've finally let the truth be seen. And the truth? It's brutal. It shows them that without their lies they are exposed, empty, and unraveling. Romans 2:8 warns, to those who are self-seeking and who reject the truth and follow evil, there will be wrath and anger. You never sought revenge. You sought clarity. And now, clarity is crashing down on them harder than any confrontation ever could. So let them sit in it. Let them wrestle with the realization that what they thought was power was only pretense, because the only thing more painful than losing control is realizing you never had it to begin with. Number 12. They mocked you. Now they mimic you. They once laughed at your path, rolled their eyes at your silence, mocked your methods, dismissed your pace, but chosen one. Have you noticed how they've started talking like you, moving like you, quoting the very truths they once ridiculed? First, they laughed. Then they ignored. Now they imitate. Because what they once couldn't understand, they now desperately want to be part of. You didn't move like them. You didn't seek validation. You didn't beg to be seen. And that threatened them, because the world taught them that success was loud, fast, performative. But you redefined what it means to be powerful, and now they copy what they use to mock. John 15:18-19 reminds us, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. They didn't mock you because you were wrong. They mocked you because you were right too early. Like Nicki Minaj, who was ridiculed for her bold style, only to see the very industry that rejected her begin to emulate it. Or Tyler, the creator, once dismissed for his unconventional sound, who now leads fashion and music alike. Isn't it fascinating how the misunderstood often become the blueprint? They once said your ideas were strange. Now they post them as inspiration. They once said your mindset was too radical. Now they preach it as if it's their own. But here's the truth. You can't mimic divine alignment. You can wear the outfit, copy the tone, but essence cannot be cloned. Take Temple Grandin, once mocked for how she thought and saw the world. Now she's one of the most respected animal scientists in history, or Zaha Hadid, whose architectural visions were once too strange. Today, her work redefined modern design. Why do you think they're running to become what they once laughed at? Because they've seen the shift. Your path, the one they scorned, is now the one clearing the way to real impact. The results are speaking, and suddenly it's not funny anymore. And yet, while they scramble to become like you, you've already evolved again. While they echo your old language, you're already speaking a new one. That's what terrifies them. You can't be caught. You're not ahead because of speed. You're ahead because of divine clarity. Isaiah 43:19 proclaims, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? You're not just different. You're an entirely new dimension, and they can't keep up. So let them copy, let them quote, let them dress like you, speak like you, posture like you, because by the time they finish mimicking version 1 of you, you'll already be living in version 10. Isn't it the most poetic justice when imitation becomes their only option? They thought mocking you gave them power, but now your rise is proving their weakness. And every time they try to become what they once ridiculed, it reminds them of their greatest mistake. They underestimated someone who was sent, not made. 1 Corinthians 2:14 reminds us, "The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God. They are foolishness to him. They couldn't understand you because you weren't born to be understood. You were born to lead. Let them follow, let them stumble in your footsteps, because the view from where you stand now, it's one they can only dream of reaching." Number 13, they thought they could erase you. Now you're unavoidable. They tried so hard to make you invisible, whispered your name like it was a mistake, moved in silence to erase your presence from the rooms you were destined to enter. They smiled politely while slowly removing you from the conversations, the plans, the opportunities. But tell me, chosen one, have you ever seen someone try to bury a seed, not realizing it was never a burial, but a planting? They thought they were erasing you, but they were activating your ascension. They told others you weren't relevant, made you out to be unworthy, rolled their eyes when your name was mentioned. They worked overtime to make sure your light stayed dim. But the more they tried to bury you, the more unstoppable your rise became. Like Psalm 118 verse 22 says, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." They wanted you to disappear because your presence threatened their illusion. Your very existence made their false confidence tremble. So they ignored you, denied you, removed you from the narrative. But truth isn't erased. It resurfaces, it echoes, it multiplies. Have you started to notice that the more silent you became, the more undeniable your impact grew? Now look at you, appearing in spaces they swore you'd never touch, being celebrated in rooms they thought you'd never enter, your name being spoken with reverence without you even needing to be in the room. And what stings the most? You didn't force it. You didn't scream for validation. You simply became. Like Viola Davis once told, she wasn't pretty enough for lead roles. Now she's one of the few EGOT winners. Or Nikola Tesla, dismissed and erased from history for decades until the world caught up to his vision. Or Frida Kahlo, whose art was overlooked in her lifetime, but now adorns galleries worldwide. You were always the one, but the world needed time to see it. John 1:5 reminds us, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. They tried to dim you, but you were the light, and no matter how long they denied it, light always exposes what was hidden. And now, everywhere they turn, there you are, not in revenge, not in bitterness, but in purpose, in growth, in success." Isn't it poetic how the ones who tried to silence you must now watch as your voice shapes the atmosphere they once tried to dominate? Let them squirm, let them scroll, let them pretend not to see your name as it echoes in rooms they can't block anymore, because this is the power of being chosen. The truth was never theirs to contain, and now it's rising, and you, chosen one, are rising with it. Isaiah 60:15 declares, "Although you have been forsaken and hated, I will make you the everlasting pride and the joy of all generations." They tried to make you forgettable, but now you're unforgettable. And the most devastating part for them, they can't undo what's already been written. Number 14. The universe was always watching, and now it's delivering. They moved like no one was watching, whispered their lies behind closed doors, forged alliances in darkness, and played with lives as if truth was a game. They believed they could manipulate the outcome and outrun the consequences. But, chosen one, have you ever felt a shift in the air when justice begins to stir? They thought the universe was silent. They thought it was sleeping, but what they didn't understand, the universe doesn't sleep. It watches, it records, and when divine timing is activated, it moves with precision. Galatians 6:7 says, "Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows." They sowed deception, manipulation, greed, betrayal, and now they're reaping what they planted. They believed they could crush you in secret and walk away untouched. But every step they took against you was noted. Every false story they spread, every door they slammed, every time they smiled in your face while plotting behind your back. Have you noticed how the very things they used against you are now crumbling beneath them? They dismissed you as naive, but you weren't naive. You were covered. While they played games, you were being protected. While they manipulated, you were being molded. While they rushed to win, you waited for divine timing. Romans 2:6 says, "God will repay each person according to what they have done." The moment of reckoning always arrives, slowly, quietly, then all at once. Like whistleblower Jeffrey Wigand, who risked everything to expose big tobacco. His truth was buried, but it roared back louder. Or Anita Hill, once publicly shamed, now a symbol of courage and reform. Or climate activist Vanessa Nakate, who was cropped out of international media coverage, only to become one of the most respected voices of her generation. The universe keeps score, and now it's settling the books. And they feel it. They won't say it out loud, but their spirit knows. The ease they once operated with is gone. Their confidence, shaky. Their control, slipping. They speak, but their words no longer carry weight. They move, but nothing clicks like it used to. Ecclesiastes 3:17 says, "God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked." This is that moment. The scales are shifting, not because you fought, but because you endured. Have you realized that your patience was never passive? It was prophetic. And now it's harvest season, but not just for them, for you. Everything you sowed in faith, every tear you cried in silence, every sacrifice you made without recognition, it's all returning. And they have no choice but to watch it unfold. Let them feel the imbalance they once created. Let them sit in the unease of what they thought they'd never face. Because justice delayed is never justice denied. Isaiah 61:7 promises, "Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and everlasting joy will be yours." And chosen one, it's your portion season now. So stand tall, smile, watch. Because while they're realizing the weight of what they've done, you're stepping into everything they said you'd never reach. And the best part, you didn't have to chase it. The universe brought it to your feet. Number 15. They wanted you to doubt yourself because they were always afraid of your power. They didn't need to destroy you, they just needed you to hesitate. Doubt was always their strategy, because doubt is a slow poison. It's subtle, invisible, but chosen one. Have you ever stopped to wonder why they were so invested in making you question yourself? Why your voice threatened them even before it was fully formed? It was never about you being weak. It was about you being unaware of your own strength. They saw the light in you before you did, and instead of nurturing it, they feared it. They couldn't control someone who knew their value. So, they planted shadows in your mind. And every time you questioned if you were good enough, smart enough, strong enough, they felt safer. But here's what they underestimated. Doubt cannot kill what is destined. Psalm 139:14 declares, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You were crafted with divine intention, and no opinion, no dismissal, no manipulation can erase that." So they made you feel like an outsider, laughed when you spoke truth, minimized your presence, not because it was small, but because it made theirs feel smaller. Have you noticed how those who belittle you the most are usually the ones most afraid of you rising? They needed you to forget yourself, but you were always remembering, slowly, quietly, and then completely. Like Oprah Winfrey, who was told she was unfit for TV, or Howard Schultz, the former Starbucks CEO, who grew up in housing projects and was told to stay in his lane, or Ava DuVernay, who was rejected by major studios for years before creating films that redefined the industry. Isn't it revealing how many of the world's most powerful voices were once silenced by doubt, until they stopped seeking permission to exist? They convinced you to hold back, not because they were superior, but because your full expression would expose their own insecurities. They never feared your failure. They feared your clarity, because the moment you stepped into who you truly were, they knew they'd lose the ability to shape how you saw yourself. And now, that moment has arrived. You've awakened. You're no longer waiting for validation. You no longer adjust your truth to make others comfortable. You've seen their tactics. You've outgrown their manipulations. And now the very thing they feared most has become their reality. You know who you are. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." The fear they projected was never yours to carry. The confusion they tried to install was never a reflection of your soul. It was a reflection of their panic. You see the patterns now. You hear the tone in their voice when they try to plant hesitation. But it no longer works, because the war is over. And you didn't just survive the battle, you mastered it. Like Misty Copeland, who was told her body didn't belong in ballet. She didn't change herself, she changed the standard. And now you're doing the same, not by becoming louder, but by becoming clearer. Do you realize now that every time you doubted yourself, it wasn't your voice you were hearing, it was theirs? And now that you've stopped listening, their influence has collapsed. Isaiah 54:17 reminds us, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you." Their words, once sharp, now fall flat. Their strategies, once effective, now fail. Because the moment you stopped questioning yourself, they lost all control. So let them watch. Let them sit in the silence of their own fear. Let them feel the absence of the power they once held over you. Because now their whispers don't shake you, their silence doesn't unsettle you, their mockery doesn't move you. Romans 8:37 declares, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." You didn't just break free, you broke through. And now, chosen one, every step you take is a reminder that their greatest fear has come to life. You are no longer manageable, no longer uncertain, no longer under their illusion. You are seen, you are sure, and you are unstoppable. Beloved chosen one, they tried to control the narrative, tried to keep you doubting, tried to make sure you never realized your own power. But now that illusion is shattered, you see the truth. You were never the fool, they were. And their biggest fear? You stepping into who you were always meant to be. So let them watch, let them sit in their regret, because you're rising and there's no stopping it now. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Every moment you've spent here is deeply valued. Whether you've been silently absorbing each word or boldly claiming your place as one of the chosen, your presence means more than I can express. If this message has spoken to your spirit, and if you feel moved to support this channel, you're welcome to donate through Super Thanks. Your generosity helps keep this light shining. But whether you give or not, know this: I am grateful for you either way. Your energy, your attention, your presence is already a powerful gift. So like, share, and subscribe to help this message reach more of the chosen. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know it's time to rise. May peace surround your path. May truth continue to guide your steps. And may you walk boldly in the fullness of who you are. No longer hidden, no longer doubting, but fully awakened to your divine design. Your time is here. Own it. With love, blessings to you always.